So many people thought I was nuts, and perhaps I am. But for me, the right thing to do was to follow the words in the dream. And here's Jack. Anyone that suffered a traumatic loss will look at a new life as a gift. Does it replace Molly? No. It's not like that at all. And I feel there's a lot of Molly in Jack all the time. I feel it. My name is Barbara Higgins. I go by Barb.
She's 57 years old, a workout fiend, an elementary school phys ed teacher, mentally and physically ready to care for a newborn.
Becoming one of the oldest women to give birth in the U.S.
I've never ever looked at my 50s as a time that I would retire and start playing golf or whatever.
Yeah. I'm Kenny Banzhoff, and I am Jack, Gracie's dad.
That makes me. My name is Gracie Banzhoff. I am Molly and Jack's older sister.
Coming in close, Molly. Give me a hi. All right.
Oh, Molly. Molly was a gem.
Molly. Oh, man.
Molly, sweet Molly.
She was so smart and so beautiful, so talented.
She was very, very concerned about justice and equity. So if somebody was being treated poorly at school, that was her new person to take care of. Gracie looks at the world through rose-colored glasses and everything is sort of fluffy and wonderful. And Molly was a critique of everything, analyzing, thinking, asking questions. So they were a perfect balance.
She just had a great sense of humor, and we would just be rolling on the floor laughing.
She was a dancer and involved in theater.
You have a sleepover with your best friend and you do all the fun things, and that was just life. That was just my life with her. Yeah, she was just really, really cool, and I miss her a lot.
She began to have symptoms around Christmas, and they became pretty severe around Valentine's Day of 2016. We took several trips to the doctor, with varying ideas on what might be going on.
They weren't just like a headache. They really, when she would bend down like this, it would pound her.
On May 1st, took her to the emergency room, and she was treated for a migraine. The tumor was in her brainstem, which of course controls all your basic functions.
They told us that they were too late. And we went, what do you mean you're too late? She had a tumor rupture in her brain. And I'm sorry, we're too late. Well, Barb, she didn't handle that very well.
I heard this really loud screaming noise, and I wondered who the heck is screaming, and it was me. I crawled up on the table. I screamed into the doctor's face. I crawled off the table onto the floor. I mean, I can't explain in words that match how that felt. And I felt like I was next to myself. Doctor said, look, we'll rush her up to Hanover to Dartmouth Hitchcock and remove the tumor. She's young, she's healthy. Kids, sometimes miracles can happen. When we were driving to the hospital in the middle of the night, I said to Gracie, we have to be ready for three things. Molly's fine, Molly's gone, Molly's not the same, but somewhere in the middle. In my heart and head, I think I knew that she was gone. Nothing changed in the 24 hours. And so it was becoming pretty obvious. The person in charge of Molly's team, she looked at us and very directly said, Molly is gone. She was gone before she came to this hospital. The rupture of the tumor killed her. She had a traumatic injury to her brain. She will not wake up. The sobbing and screaming, I couldn't repeat that noise if you asked me to. I went and got Gracie and brought her into the room, and this doctor just explained it so gently to her, the reasons that Molly's brain had died. And she said, okay, I have one question, and you can be honest with me. And he said, ask away. And she said, when will Molly wake up? I'm sorry. So after hearing all that specific information about Molly's dead brain, so the doctor did just what I'm doing. His whole face trembled and tears rolled down, and he said she'll never wake up. And so for me, I think that's the hardest memory of all this. It's just how hard that was for Gracie. And she had such a typical 15-year-old reaction. No, that's my baby, that's my baby.
There had to be 500, 600, 700 people that have come up in all those days.
I learned so much about Molly in those 3 days, listening to her friends and their families talk about her, watching them cry.
There was a room full of kids, and they were singing songs. The girls painted their nails. You know, they made her look pretty. They did her hair.
This was a little girl named Anna, and they were reading a book together. She didn't feel it was right to continue reading without Molly reading the chapter as well. So we all were quiet, and we all sat and listened to Anna read this story to Molly, the chapter of a book, so that she would not leave Molly behind.
It's really nice and comforting to see friends and family. And then you see someone, her best friend, talking to her, crying by her bedside. And it snaps you back into, oh yeah, this is going to end soon.
The whole experience was beautiful in its ugliness. And then when she was all unhooked and her sweet face didn't have tubes in it, I just climbed in bed there and sang to her, smelled her neck, kissed her face, just all the things that I did to her whole life. Looked at her shoulder dimples, her bony elbows, all of it.
Finally, I had to say, Barb, it's time. You've been in there 3 hours. We gotta we gotta go. We gotta leave.
She left us May 7th, 2016. So she had been 13 for 1 month and 7 days. So this is the Molly Bee tree. It was a tree made in honor of Molly by one of Molly's best friends. So they created this tree and entered it into a raffle. We missed the raffle because we were away, and a Concord Dance Academy family won it. They gave us the tree. It's been up ever since, and it's a good way to teach Jack about Molly, isn't it? We had 2 funerals for Molly. We buried her on May 11th in a pretty pink dress, and her casket is pink. And I didn't want Molly's friends to have the last image of her in a box going into the ground. It was important to me that she remain the Molly that they knew and loved. When we were going through all the options of how to commemorate her, Molly loved being on the stage, and she loved that theater. We came up with the idea to have like a musical review. It was May 23rd at the Capitol Center for the Arts, which is this beautiful theater in downtown Concord. It seats about 1,300 people, and it was full. There wasn't a place for anyone else to come in. We just dimmed the lights and opened the show with this big musical number called It's a Musical. And it was all of Molly's dance friends.
And the kids danced their hearts out. They danced their hearts out.
There were dance numbers, scenes from the plays that Molly had been in. A couple of her friends sang to her. One of her best friends played Amazing Grace on the violin. In between each act were the adults in Molly's life. Teachers, directors, dance instructors, babysitters. And they would tell stories in between.
All of these memories I talked about today remind me of the most important lessons Molly taught me during her 13 beautiful years with us. Never take life for granted. Always smile, even in the bad times, and take a little bit of time to go out of your way to make others happy.
I mean, it just went on, and I never wanted it to end. I never wanted it to end. It was just a wonderful time to celebrate her life.
They have a marquee out front, and so Molly Bee the Musical was on the marquee. And I remember Gracie commenting that. Molly, that would be the best part for Molly, that there's her name. Everyone drives by and sees her name on stage, that she's front and center. Most of the first year, as I look back on it, was just walking around in a daze of confusion and grief. I started waking up in the night all sweaty, and so I thought, well, this is weird. I've never woken up sweaty before. And I started to have these dreams about having babies. I really just thought, okay, maybe I'm suddenly going to go through menopause now. I would think, well, have a baby. I went to the doctor to get just checked out to make sure my body was okay. And I mentioned, gee, I was thinking I would love to have a baby. And this particular doctor thought that was a terrible idea, gave me a bit of grief about it, yelled at me a bit. That's insane, and that's crazy thinking, and that's grief, and really, really sort of let me have it. And it took me back a bit. So I went home and did nothing. I didn't say anything to anybody. The most specific dreams showed up in August and September. And those were more insistent. I'd wake up hearing a voice, Barbara, you have to have a baby. So I was driving home one day from coaching, and that was when I heard the voice the loudest. So I pulled the car over and called my doctor, who ended up treating me throughout my whole pregnancy.
Kenny, I've got an idea. And I'm thinking, all right, we're going to go on a cruise, maybe go cross country. You know, that's what you do. I'm trying to think, buy a second house in Florida. No, I want to have a baby.
Well, the good thing about Kenny is he's a pretty easygoing guy.
I had to think about it for, a day or so. And I thought, hey, this would be cool. This would be really cool.
It wasn't how it is when you're 30 and you're like, let's make a baby, This is a very different process. There's appointments to be made and months go by. At this point, we had nothing to lose because we'd lost everything is how we felt. We both had to have a lot of medical testing done to make sure we were both healthy. If anything was wrong with me that could have caused a problem, I wouldn't have been allowed to go through with the IVF. You can't just give somebody your money and have the baby. Here, I want to have a baby. Here's the money. When do we start? It's not an inexpensive venture. It's quite costly. Kenny was on disability at the time for his kidney disease and everything, and on dialysis. And after looking at the money and feeling a bit disheartened, realizing, this isn't something we can do right now. So I remember just looking up at the top of the car as we're driving from the doctor and just saying, okay, I've done what I can. Stop hounding me, whoever you are, telling me to have this baby. Please, please, leave me be. I'm doing the best I can. If I can make it happen, I will. Quite honestly, I wasn't there yet. I felt like I was doing what I was supposed to do in the journey of having a baby. But was I ready in January or February of 2017 to actually start the process? No. And I think the financial piece put a pause on it that was necessary. A lawsuit keeps you in the time that she was alive, reliving over and over again what could have been done, what wasn't done, what could have been done, what should have been. So there's the part of you that still thinks she's here and that she's going to walk up the driveway. And it took about 2 weeks, but we woke up and had our coffee on the porch, and I said to Kenny, guess what dream I had last night? And he said, the baby dream. Now it's 2018, so now I'm just about to turn 55, which is the limit, or so I thought. I was on piles of medication at the time. So my initial challenge was to get off all of this medication for me. I have a condition called trigeminal neuralgia, and it's treated with anti-seizure meds and nerve blocks. Trigeminal neuralgia is like a knifing pain. I felt like I had a toothache all the time. So I said to Kenny, I'm going to have to get my mouth fixed. And there's a doctor at White Plains, New York, who specializes in this. December 10th, I have my MRI. And I'm sitting at the kitchen table with Kenny, and the phone rings. And they don't call you when there's good news an hour after an MRI. My neurologist tells me that I have 3 brain tumors in my head. So that was a pretty hard phone call. My first thought was the whole time I was fighting to save Molly, I had tumors in my own head. The second piece of that news was that I would have to tell Gracie. Her father has kidney disease, her sister's dead, and now her mother has brain tumors. I would never have gone off my medication if I weren't trying to have this baby. And I have this giant brain tumor sitting on my carotid artery. I was months away from starting to have symptoms that could have been very severe and life-threatening, likely stroke-producing. So had I not been trying to bring a little Jack into the world, I wouldn't be sitting here right now in a million different ways. January of 2019, I had brain surgery to remove the tumor. We call the week that Molly died Death Week. We've never stayed home then. We've always gotten out of here. I'm bald, with scars all over my head, feeling miserable, and Kenny is so sick, really, really at the end stages of renal failure.
I was on the waiting list forever, trying to get a kidney, and it just seems like every year I got older, the younger ones are getting the kidneys.
It's Gracie's birthday. We're in Florida. I probably should have been home in bed. And we find out at this time that a friend of Molly's is on life support at the same hospital she had been on life support at. So, of course, we jumped into action because the one thing that makes a mother who's lost a child feel purposeful is to be able to help another mother. Came home from our vacation, went up to the hospital, and there we are in the same hospital that Molly was on life support with a family that goes to the same dance school. This girl on life support danced in that opening number, that big opening musical number. This girl danced in that number, Rachel. She suffered from anaphylaxis, ate some peanuts in food that she didn't know had peanuts. In the process of helping them and supporting them, they asked me if we had donated Molly's organs. We had not been able to go through that process because we didn't know if Molly's tumor was cancerous. We could donate her eyes. Her big, beautiful eyes are helping somebody somewhere see more clearly. And I said, that's too bad because we could have given Kenny Molly's kidney. Rachel's mother, Jen, says, Kenny needs a kidney. I didn't know that. And she asked his blood type. So May 7th, we were at the cemetery celebrating Molly's 3rd anniversary of going to heaven. And Rachel was celebrating her 21st birthday, hooked up to life support. I get a phone call from Jen asking me, could we have Kenny's transplant coordinator's name, because they want to give Kenny one of Rachel's kidneys. So on May 8th, I drove to White Plains to have my head checked for brain surgery recovery, and Kenny drove to Mass General to receive a kidney transplant. So my favorite thing to explain what this means to me is that a kidney that danced in Molly's funeral now lives in Molly's dad.
It saved my life, and I couldn't believe it. I have a new birthday, because it took. I'm lucky. That's pure luck. You know, because those kidneys could have gone anywhere.
My sister-in-law, Kathy, made these for us. This is what we had gone through, from me going off all that medicine, thinking I'm just going to get my mouth fixed and start the process, to brain tumor removal and mouth fixing and kidney transplants and all of those things. I add this to my list of miracles in the process of creating Jack. It was in August of 2019 that we went back to the doctor and could start up again. The process of IVF is complex and really, really unique couple to couple. So I had the first transfer, and that was in the fall of 2019. That first time around, I felt nothing. I didn't feel any different. So I remember saying to Kenny, no, I don't think so. I don't think this time it took. And it didn't. We made some changes, then COVID arrived. So everything was just put on hold. As the summer went along and things started opening up, we did the IVF transfer on July 26th. And they tell you don't take a pregnancy test, but I'll tell you right now, there's not a woman in the world that goes home for 10 days and doesn't pee on 50 sticks. So I waited about 3 or 4 days, and I just couldn't help it. Every day I'm doing this, and every day there's a little line getting a little darker and a little darker. So on August 5th, I got the news that I was indeed pregnant. There began the next sort of step in the big journey, is actually being pregnant. For 12 weeks, I say nothing to anybody. So then you go off all that medicine. Patches come off, the shots go away, no more pills. So that was a stressful time, because I thought, okay, if my body can't do it, this is when it won't happen. And that's when I first had my first local appointment. I went to Dr. Chaudhary, and everything looked fine. They do a little ultrasound, and there it is, this little teeny tiny baby in there. Ha!
My name is Ashish Chaudhary. I'm an OBGYN who works for Dartmouth Hitchcock out of Concord, New Hampshire. And I was the obstetrician who took care of Barbara Higgins for the majority of her pregnancy. The pregnancy in anyone who is over the age of 35 to now 40 has become sort of a new limit. There's a lot of complications that can arise. Particularly, we worry about women having a problem with hypertensive diseases, so blood pressure issues that can lead to gestational hypertension, preeclampsia, and even eclampsia, which can be very dangerous to both mother and child, fetus. We worry about diabetes, and more importantly, we worry about the health of the fetus, given that the placenta can age very rapidly in an older mom. For someone who's older, we will monitor them much more carefully in the office, along with ultrasounds, labs, even something called non-stress testing or biophysical profiles. So a lot of extra testing that can be done to just be sure that everything is going well, and it's done at a much more frequent rate. I think this is a very unique circumstance with her having a child at 57. It's definitely not recommended because of the number of complications that can occur for the baby and for the mom. And Barb's heard me say that before, so she won't be upset if I say that.
The only people that really knew were the people at my gym, because it's very hard to wear workout clothes and have this belly that just keeps getting bigger. However, being a woman in my 50s, I could just sort of fluff it off as, oh my God, menopause weight, look at my belly. And the other women in the gym would be like, I know. Oh yeah, we would laugh about it and everything, and I'd just sort of giggle in my head. I maintained all working out. I came in second in the plank contest at 18 weeks with this little baby in there. I just lived my life. I just kept doing what I did and felt terrific. So everything was great. We're marching along. My due date is April 13th. So I go for a doctor's appointment. I have nice low blood pressure. Everything is fine. I go home. I go to the gym. I work out. Twice a week I would go, and they listen to Jack's heart to make sure he's not under any stress and all this. And my blood pressure goes, yesterday was 125 over 65. That Thursday it was like 180 over 80, and suddenly just ridiculously high. Sure enough, I have preeclampsia. They want me to deliver that day. We scheduled my induction for Saturday the 20th, and I just fought it the whole time. I wanted Dr. Chaudhary to deliver the baby. Dr. Chaudhary was going to be away. I was at 36 weeks. So 36 weeks isn't necessarily considered premature, but it's early. So I woke up on Saturday, March 20th, and my doctor comes in, this lovely woman, and says, "So how are you feeling?" I said, "Well, I feel fine. Are we not having a baby? I thought I was going to have." And she just looks at me and tilts her head, and she said, "You went into labor at 3 o'clock in the morning." And what? I went into labor all by myself in my sleep, which I didn't know.
All this equipment's being brought into the room, and it's the heavy duty stuff, like labor stuff. And I went, "Barb, the heavy equipment's coming in. You must be ready to go." She said, "No, I can't be." We expected maybe 6-7 hours, maybe more of labor. And oh gosh, push, once, push, twice, there it is. And it was wonderful. Well, what a blessing to hear that little baby cry.
The moment he came out, he came right to my chest. So I kissed him and loved him. It's sort of that surreal feeling where you kind of can't believe it's happening. Oh my God, he's here. It worked. He really was a baby inside me all that time.
You get teary-eyed. You get teary-eyed pretty quickly. Such a blessing of a feeling. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Very happy. And you make sure he's healthy, 10 toes, everything.
I can't even put words on it. And I still also sometimes, I'll wake up at night and I'll think, oh my God, it worked. I have a baby. Like, what do I do now? What was I thinking? The overwhelming piece, I think, is the attention it receives and the judgments of people. The negative responses I see online are along the lines of, well, how selfish, they'll be changing her diapers in 10 years and that, those kinds of things. The big thing, I think, is the mental shift. You're different in your 50s than you are in your 30s, obviously. But the stressors of life and the pressures that are on families when they're raising children and starting careers and buying homes and doing all of those things at the same time doesn't exist for us. Is it stressful? Yes. Does Jack dictate every move I make? Of course he does. He's a baby. But I don't have the same external pressures that I had 20 years ago.
Now I don't have to work. I wake up and all I can do is, bring Jack in, cuddle with him. It's just no pressure. And I do my morning walks.
We are relaxing. We're just relaxing with a baby, whose name is Jack.
Becoming an older sister to Jack has been pretty fun. I enjoy looking after him, taking care of him, playing with him, making him laugh. Just fun to have a baby in the house. Definitely brought some light into our home.
We talk about Molly all the time. We take Jack to visit her grave. Molly's a part of our life and our conversation, and it's a part of Jack's.
He will definitely know his sister, right? Yeah. Do you know Molly? You do?
So you put it in warm water. I have no middle ground in my life. It's never 70 degrees and sunny 7 days in a row in my life. It's either freezing cold or sweltering hot. There's just no middle ground for me. What are you doing? Hi. And what I've come to learn through all the amazing things I've gone through and all of the horrifying things I've gone through, there isn't anyone in the world that can tell you how to do it because they aren't you and it's not their experience. If there's a mother watching that's lost a child, if there's a mother that can't have a child, your first step is your first step. And trusting your own instincts and finding those that can help you take the next step in a productive way. That's the biggest takeaway I have from Molly's death, from a job loss I suffered years ago, from heartbreak, from illness. All of it is, well, here I am. I have to take the next step. And how can I do that in the best way?